This 13-year-old black kid just tried to open his first bank account. And in the next 30 minutes, the bank would call the cops on him. But here's what the bank didn't know. His dad is one of the most powerful CEOs in the entire city. And what happened next? It completely shook the entire financial world. It was a bright, sunny Tuesday in downtown Raleigh. 13-year-old Jaden Bennett stepped off the bus, backpack in hand, heart pounding with excitement. He had everything he needed $800 in crisp bills from his grandma, ID, and a letter from his dad. Today was a big day. He wasn't buying sneakers or a new game. He was opening his first bank account. Like a responsible young adult. Like his dad taught him. He walked through the glass doors of First National Bank. And that's where things took a dark turn. The moment the teller, Lisa Edwards, laid eyes on Jaden, her entire demeanor changed. From a friendly bank worker to a cold wall of suspicion. "What do you want?" she snapped. Jaden blinked, confused, but still calm. "Hi, ma'am. I'd like to open my first bank account. I brought all my documents." He placed the envelope of cash and paperwork on the counter. But Lisa didn't look at the papers. Her eyes locked on the cash. She squinted. Her lip curled. "A kid like you with this much cash? Where'd you steal it from?" Jaden's heart dropped. He stumbled over his words. It's my birthday money. And some savings. I worked really hard." Lisa leaned in and smirked. "Yeah. Kids like you always have a story." And just like that, she waved for her manager. Enter Karen Mitchell. The moment she walked over, the tension tripled. She didn't ask questions. She didn't check the documents. She just looked Jaden up and down. "This much money? No way that's clean. I don't buy it. I need the police." And right there, in front of the entire bank, she picked up the phone and called the cops. "There's a young thief here trying to deposit stolen money." Jaden was speechless. The entire lobby stared. Whispers spread. Some people laughed. Others pulled out their phones. And then, in a soft, broken voice, Jaden said, "Please, can I just call my dad?" Karen sneered. "Sure, call him. Tell him to bring bail money." What she didn't know what none of them knew was that Jaden's dad was Charles Bennett, the CEO of Bennett Global Solutions, a self-made billionaire, and one of the bank's biggest corporate clients. In less than 20 minutes, a black SUV skidded into the bank's parking lot. Out stepped Charles Bennett. In a tailored suit. Calm. Powerful. He walked into the bank like a storm in silence. "Where is my son?" And the room froze. Karen's smug face twisted into panic. Lisa tried to disappear behind her counter. Charles walked to Jaden, put a protective hand on his shoulder, and turned to the stunned bank staff. "You've humiliated my son. You profiled him. And now you're going to face the consequences." He pulled out his phone and tapped it once. "Mr. Andrews, cancel our $9.8 million account with First National. Effective immediately." Karen's face went white. And then, the truth hit the bank like a tidal wave. News spread. The bank stocks dipped. The CEO of First National made a public apology. Karen was fired. Lisa too. And Jaden? He didn't just open a bank account. He became the face of a national conversation. Today, Jaden works with a youth financial literacy group, helping other young teens learn how to save, invest, and stand up for themselves. All because he chose to be brave, calm, and honest. And his dad? He didn't just pull his money out. He launched a new initiative to build financial programs in underserved schools across the state. Sneered and cut him off. "Honest? Hardworking? Those words sound ridiculous coming from you. Look at you, so young, black, showing up with stacks of cash, insisting you're here to open an account. Do you think I was born yesterday? Every one of Lisa's poisonous remarks was a blade stabbing into Jaden's pride. His confidence shattered. With trembling hands, he set his papers on the counter, voice choked with despair. Please just call my dad. He'll explain everything. Lisa stared at him with an icy glare, then shook her head curtly. I don't want to hear another lie from you. It's time for my manager to handle this. Before Jaden could react, Lisa grabbed the phone and punched in an extension. Her tone tense but triumphant. Karen, please come down here right away. I've got a special case for you. Looks like some kid is trying to open an account with suspicious cash. She clicked the receiver down and gave Jaden a victorious glance. Jaden was now in full panic, standing motionless as tears streamed down his cheeks, unable to believe his big day had turned into such a disaster. At the end of the hallway, the office door swung open, and the sharp click of high heels echoed as a powerful woman strode toward the teller line. From the crowd emerged Karen Mitchell, First National Bank senior manager, known for her ironclad control and hard-nosed attitude, but also for the deep prejudice no one dared to challenge. Karen locked eyes on Jaden with a stern expression. Without waiting for an explanation, she asked Lisa in a decisive, skeptical tone. What's the problem here, Lisa? Lisa stepped forward, her gaze flicking triumphantly to Jaden before answering. This boy has $800 in cash and insists it's a birthday gift. I suspect it's from illegal sources. When I pressed him, he got evasive and showed signs of losing his cool. I thought you should handle it yourself. Karen narrowed her eyes as she studied Jaden, then leaned in and said just loudly enough for him to hear. This kid is definitely a problem. I'll get to the bottom of this myself. Jaden stood there, utterly alone and helpless, unaware that his nightmare was only just beginning. From the moment Karen Mitchell appeared, the tension at the teller line turned icy. Her decisive footsteps echoed across the glossy white tile, the authoritative click of her high heels parting the crowd as customers instinctively stepped aside. Karen's steely gaze swept over Jaden, then snapped to Lisa, her voice carrying both authority and impatience. I hear this boy is carrying a suspicious amount of cash? Lisa nodded quickly, her tone obsequious. Yes, ma'am. He insists it's a birthday gift and his savings, but I can see his hesitation. I suspect it's illicit money, so I asked you to handle it directly. Without letting Lisa finish, Karen turned her full attention back to Jaden, her look dripping with contempt. Deep-seated prejudices long buried surged to the surface, sharpening the bias she'd hidden behind a professional smile. In Karen's mind, any unaccompanied child of color showing up with a large sum could only mean one thing: wrongdoing. She was convinced Jaden was a troublemaker attempting some amateur fraud. Boy, exactly where did you get this money? Karen demanded, her tone devoid of compassion. You'd better be honest. I don't have time to waste. Jaden, still trembling under the glare, wiped tears from his cheeks. He took a shaky breath, voice cracking but determined. Ma'am, I swear this money is legal. It's a birthday gift from my grandmother plus my own savings from helping my dad at home. I have all the documents to prove it. He extended his meticulously prepared papers once more, hoping Karen would see reason. But she didn't even glance at them. Instead, she shook her head and laughed coldly, as if hearing the punchline of a bad joke. I don't have time for a child's fairy tale. Birthday gift? Savings? I've seen plenty of kids like you. Don't bother with the act. It won't work. Karen turned back to Lisa, irritation in her eyes. Next time, don't bother me over trivial nonsense. Call the police right away. People like this aren't worth our time. Her words struck Jaden's pride like a dagger. Overcome with shame, he could barely stand. Desperate, he pleaded. Please believe me. I'm not lying. If you don't trust me, let me call my dad. He'll explain everything. Karen's eyes narrowed in icy resolve. No, I'm not giving you another chance to pull a stunt. I've heard enough lies. The police will uncover whatever you're hiding. Jaden's hand shook as he reached for his phone, but before he could dial, Karen snatched it away in one brusque motion. I said no. You can't call anyone. This is a bank, not your playground. Her ruthless act made the air even more oppressive. Customers whispered anxiously, none daring to intervene. Some shook their heads at Karen's cruelty, but all remained silent. Karen ignored them. In her mind, only pride and unwavering faith in her own judgment counted, a blind. This kid walked into a bank to open his first account, and minutes later, the police were called on him. But what the bank didn't know was who his dad was. And when they found out, everything exploded. Jaden Bennett, just 13 years old, walked into First National Bank with $800 in an envelope, a birthday gift from his grandmother and savings from chores. His heart was pounding, but it was excitement. Today was the day he opened his first bank account. He had all his documents, his head held high, and a big smile on his face. Until he met the teller. Lisa Edwards took one look at him, young, black, alone, with cash, and her face turned to stone. What do you want? She barked. The joy drained from Jaden's face, but he remained polite. Hi, ma'am. I'd like to open an account. I have all my paperwork and my money right here. Lisa didn't care. She squinted at the cash. $800? Where does a kid like you get that kind of money? Jaden tried to explain. It was a birthday gift and some savings. I did chores. Right. And I'm the Queen of England, she scoffed. Then she did something no one expected. She picked up the phone and called the manager. And just moments later, Karen Mitchell, yes, Karen, the senior manager with a reputation for being cold, came stomping down the hallway like a storm in heels. Lisa leaned in. This kid's trying to open an account with suspicious money. Karen looked Jaden up and down. $800? This smells like drug money. I've seen kids like you before. Jaden froze. His hands trembled. Please, ma'am. I just want to open an account. I have my student ID, my birth certificate, a letter from my dad. Please just look. Karen didn't. I don't have time for fairy tales. I'm calling the police. And she did. The police were on their way. Jaden was in tears, and no one in that bank did a thing to help him. But what Karen didn't know was who Jaden's father was. 30 minutes later, the bank's front doors flew open. A tall man in a navy suit, surrounded by 2 aides, strode inside like he owned the place. Because, in a way, he did. Where is my son? He boomed. Karen stepped forward, trying to assert herself. And you are? I'm David Bennett, CEO of Bennett Strategies, strategic partner in your bank's $2.5 billion redevelopment deal. Karen turned white. The whole bank fell silent. David pushed past her and went straight to his son, wrapping his arms around the boy, then turned slowly to face the stunned staff. My son came here to open an account. Instead, you treated him like a criminal. You judged him not on his actions, but on his appearance. And you're about to find out what that mistake costs. Within hours, the internet exploded. Footage of the bank's security camera leaked. Hashtags trended. Customers pulled their accounts. A formal investigation began. Lisa was fired. Karen was suspended. But the story wasn't over. David Bennett didn't just walk away. He didn't sue. He didn't rage online. Instead, he made one phone call. And the next week, Jaden sat beside him in front of cameras as they launched the Bennett Foundation, a nonprofit helping young people of color open accounts, build credit, and get access to the financial tools no one ever taught them. Hundreds of kids signed up. Banks across the country joined the mission. And Jaden? He became the youngest board member in the foundation. At 13, what started as a nightmare became a nationwide movement. Because sometimes, the most powerful response to injustice isn't revenge. It's transformation. And this time, it all started with a boy, a binder, and a bank that made one huge mistake. The phone lit up. She hadn't meant to turn it on. It just powered up in her hand. Then she saw it. One message. One moment. And suddenly, her breath caught in her throat. The screen glared back at her, accusing her with a truth she wasn't ready to face. A cold chill crept up her spine for the first time that day. Had she made a mistake? Was her decision hasty? Biased? A flicker of guilt tried to rise, quiet, almost invisible, but her pride crushed it flat before it could grow. No way, she told herself. Not some kid like that. Black. Alone. Nervous. Suspicious. Her mind locked the door on doubt. Slammed it shut. Bolted it. But what she didn't realize was that the message she saw wasn't just a desperate cry. It was a spark. And that spark was about to explode into a firestorm. Because the man on the other end of that message? He wasn't ordinary. He wasn't powerless. He was Dr. Michael Bennett. And he was not the kind of man you crossed, especially when it came to his son. Miles away, inside a glass fortress that pierced the clouds, Dr. Bennett was in the middle of a billion-dollar negotiation. The Bennett Group's headquarters pulsed with energy. Wall-to-wall glass flooded the sleek boardroom with sunlight. The skyline framed every word like it was carved into steel. Michael sat at the head of the table. Calm. Composed. Respected. His voice carried authority. The kind that made billionaires lean in to listen. But beneath that calm exterior was a father. And when his phone buzzed, just once, it was enough. He glanced at it. He never did that in meetings. Never. But something told him this was different. And it was. The message from Jaden hit like a punch to the chest. Dad, I'm at First National Bank. They're accusing me of stealing. They called the police. I'm scared. Time slowed. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. The polished boardroom, the billion-dollar deals, the handshakes and strategy, they all vanished in an instant. All that remained was rage. Cold, silent, dangerous. His expression darkened. The room froze. Partners looked around, uneasy. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Without a word of explanation, Michael stood. His movements slow, deliberate. His eyes never left the screen. Meeting adjourned, he said. We'll resume later. Silence. No one moved. Jonathan Hart stood, nervous. Michael, is everything okay? Michael didn't flinch. Didn't blink. My son is in serious trouble, he said, voice like ice. I have to go. That was all they needed to hear. He walked out. Each footstep echoed down the hall like a warning bell. A storm was coming, and they all knew it. In the elevator, he called Samuel Green, his personal assistant, always one step ahead. Samuel answered on the first ring. Yes, Mr. Bennett. Call Daniel Cooper, head of legal. Call Brian Scott, head of security. I want them in the lobby in 5 minutes. And have the car ready. We're going now. Understood, sir. The elevator descended. Michael stared into the mirror, eyes locked on his own reflection. But all he could see was Jaden, his boy. Alone. Frightened. Targeted. Because of his skin. The pain cut deep. A man like Michael could build empires, move markets, reshaped cities. But he couldn't protect his son from prejudice. Not yet. But he would. When the doors opened, he strode into the grand lobby like a general going to war. Waiting for him, Samuel, Daniel, Brian. They didn't need instructions. They knew the look in Michael's eyes. And they knew what it meant. "My son is being unlawfully detained at First National Bank," Michael said. "We leave now. I want every detail, every name, every move logged and reported to me within the hour." And then his voice dropped, heavy with warning. "No one touches my son. No one lays a finger on him. Because if they do," his eyes narrowed, "they'll regret the day they ever put on a name tag." And with that, they moved out, swift, silent, and unstoppable. The storm had begun. And it wasn't just about justice anymore. It was personal. There was a weight to his words. Heavy. Final. The kind that doesn't need threats, because the consequences are already written in stone. When Michael Bennett spoke like that, calm but deadly, the air itself shifted. His eyes carried a storm, and the people who stood on the wrong side of it, they were already in trouble. Karen Mitchell had no idea what she'd set in motion. She couldn't possibly imagine the scale of the reckoning coming for her. But it was already too late. Outside the First National Bank, a black luxury sedan glided to a halt. Not just any sedan. This one bore the custom plate, BG00001. Bennett Group 1. The personal vehicle of the man at the top, the very top. Inside the bank, everything stopped. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Coffee cups hovered halfway to lips. Every eye turned to the glass doors, suddenly overcome with a creeping sense of dread. That car didn't arrive quietly. It announced something monumental. The rear door opened with the elegance of a blade being unsheathed. And the first to step out was Brian Scott. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Broad-shouldered and built like a fortress, Brian scanned the surroundings with military precision. His suit, tailored and sharp. His expression, granite. Every motion said one thing: this isn't routine, it's an operation. 2 more guards followed, flanking him like shadows, silent, watchful, calculating. Their eyes swept the street, the sidewalk, the rooftops. They weren't just bodyguards. They were a warning. And then he stepped out. Dr. Michael Bennett. Stoic. Towering. Dressed in a charcoal suit so crisp it looked sculpted. His silver-flecked hair caught the light, but it was the fire behind his eyes that froze the world around him. This wasn't a visit. This was judgment. He moved with terrifying purpose. Every step was controlled, but the fury beneath his composed surface was impossible to miss. People backed away instinctively, uncertain if they were about to witness a business deal or an execution. From the other side of the car emerged Daniel Cooper, ice in human form. Bennett's lead attorney, known for dismantling opponents in courtrooms like a surgeon with a scalpel. If he was here, it meant legal war. The 4 men walked into the bank as if they owned it, because one of them did. Inside, every sound evaporated. Footsteps echoed. Conversations halted. Even the air seemed to thicken. Karen Mitchell glanced up from her office. She saw them through the glass. Her smile froze on her lips. Her breath caught. And her stomach dropped. She had never met him in person, but she knew the face. Everyone in the industry did. Michael Bennett didn't need introductions. He was the kind of man whose presence alone was a headline. And now, he was walking straight toward her. She stood, trying to steady herself, tried to mask her panic with a professional smile. But even she could feel it. Her confidence was cracking. He didn't break stride. He didn't smile. And he didn't pause. He stepped up to the reception desk like a king addressing his court. Calm. Controlled. Utterly lethal. The receptionist went pale. A phone call later, Karen emerged, trying to play it cool, trying to sound in control. But Michael's presence sucked the air from the room. When she approached, there was a tremor behind her voice, even as she held her head high. Her words were polished, her tone practiced, but none of it mattered. Because the man in front of her wasn't listening for excuses. He was waiting for justice. Then he spoke, and the bank seemed to flinch. Each word dropped like stone into a still pond, sending shockwaves across the marble floors. The ground beneath Karen's heels might as well have crumbled. She tried to defend herself. Explained policy. Protocol. Procedure. But Michael didn't let her finish. His voice cut clean through hers, calm, sharp, final. He knew the truth. He knew his son. He knew the money was legitimate. And he knew exactly what this was, not a misunderstanding, not a mistake, but prejudice, plain and simple. The bank's walls felt closer now. The silence deeper. Everyone, customers, tellers, even the manager's assistant Lisa, who had witnessed the earlier confrontation, could feel the weight of what was happening. Karen stood at the center of it all, eyes wide, lips tight, spine stiff, but barely holding on. She tried again, pride clinging to her like armor, insisting that what she did was policy, that the boy had acted suspiciously, that it was all for the safety of the bank. But this time, the illusion broke. Michael didn't shout. He didn't have to. His voice remained quiet, measured, and that made it worse. Because what he said next shattered everything she thought was secure. He reminded her exactly who he was, not just a customer, not just a billionaire CEO, but the majority shareholder, the owner, the man whose influence didn't just move money, it moved institutions. And First National Bank was his. Karen's face drained of color. Her breath hitched. Her pride cracked, and in its place bloomed cold, unmistakable fear. He kept going. His voice remained steady, but it was laced with fire. He told her about Jaden, about his son. Honest, respectful, raised to understand value, not just of money, but of dignity. That money was a gift. Saved, earned, celebrated. And Karen? She hadn't just made a mistake. She had violated something sacred. She had humiliated an innocent boy for no reason but the color of his skin. She had let her own fear, and worse, her bias, override everything. And now? Now she would face the consequences. She couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't even blink. Because for the first time in her career, she wasn't the one holding the power. And in that frozen, unbearable silence of the bank's lobby, as every eye watched her unravel, Karen Mitchell finally understood. She hadn't just made the wrong call. She had picked the wrong man to cross. Karen tried to speak. Her voice cracked. Her hands trembled. The strength she always carried in her title, the cold confidence of authority, was gone. She stammered. A whisper. A plea. I didn't know he was your son. But Michael Bennett didn't even blink. That wasn't the point. And he made sure everyone knew it. It wasn't about who Jaden was. It was about what she had chosen to be. In front of the entire bank, Michael's voice rang out like a judge delivering a final sentence, calm, clear, and devastating. She hadn't chosen caution. She hadn't chosen truth. She had chosen prejudice. The bank grew still. Not silent, paralyzed. The air around them thickened. It pressed down like gravity multiplied tenfold. Everyone watching knew, without a doubt, Karen Mitchell's fate had just taken a deadly turn. The same staff that once rushed to follow her orders now watched in stunned silence. Some eyes held pity. Others, quiet vindication. But all of them saw the same thing. The queen of the bank had just been dethroned. Karen stood there, frozen, rigid, pale, A woman built from pride now cracking from the inside out. Her mind raced, clawing for excuses, explanations, anything. But the truth was clear. She had made the greatest mistake of her career. Michael turned, locking eyes with Daniel Cooper. Without emotion, without hesitation, begin the investigation. Every detail, every frame, every word. He wanted it all. Daniel moved instantly. No argument. No delay. Then came Brian Scott. Michael gave the order, and Brian nodded like a soldier preparing for battle. Every piece of evidence, every person involved, held accountable. No exceptions. And then Michael turned back. His eyes met Karen's one last time. No warmth. No mercy. Just steel. And what he said next hit harder than anything else. This wasn't just about discipline. This was about making sure she never got the chance to do this again. Ever. Karen felt it deep in her bones. This was the end. And it was coming fast. The bank was silent. Not a single soul moved. It was like watching an empire fall. One arrogant decision. One unjust action. And now the foundation of her entire life was collapsing in front of witnesses. Michael turned again to Daniel, his voice colder than before. Call the chairman. Now. Not later. Not after a meeting. Now. Daniel obeyed. And minutes later, a presence swept into the lobby, Chairman Richard Morrison himself. His arrival was urgent. And for a man known for composure, his face betrayed a rare crack. Concern. He felt it the moment he stepped inside. The tension. The pressure. The weight of something deeply wrong. And when he saw Michael Bennett, standing there like a storm barely held back by discipline, he understood. This was serious. Michael didn't raise his voice. He didn't plead. He simply stated the truth. He wanted answers. He wanted the truth seen. Not told. Not twisted. Seen. And Richard Morrison, a man of principle, nodded. Immediately, he called in Mark Roberts, head of security. They gathered in the surveillance room. Michael, Richard, Daniel, Brian, and Karen, now a ghost of the woman who once ruled this place. The monitor lit up, and the footage began to roll. The room fell into darkness. The only light came from the screen, playing a reel of injustice in brutal clarity. Jaden walked in, a smile on his face, an envelope clutched tightly in his hand. He was proud, nervous but proud. That pride lasted seconds, because the moment Lisa Edwards saw him, her demeanor twisted. The look in her eyes turned sharp. The room watched her accuse him, without evidence, without cause. Her face curled into cruelty. Her voice rang with condescension. Then Karen appeared. From the very first second, her expression was venom. She didn't pause. Didn't listen. She brushed aside Jaden's documents. She snatched his phone. Ignored his every word. And on camera, in horrifying clarity, her own voice condemned her. Every insult. Every biased remark. Captured. Undeniable. And then, the officers. Travis Walsh. Amanda Cruz. They didn't ask. They didn't question. They cuffed a 13-year-old boy without reading a single line of the paperwork he tried to show them. And on the screen, that boy, Jaden Bennett, looked up at them, confused, terrified, and defeated. The room was frozen. Michael stood still, fists clenched, rage in his silence. Karen? She turned white. The footage was the final blow. There was no denying what had happened. No hiding behind protocol. No escape behind policy. What had happened here was racial discrimination. Cold. Clear. Unmistakable. Richard Morrison's face hardened. The footage ended, but the silence didn't. He turned to Karen, and even though he tried to speak calmly, the tremor in his voice betrayed his disgust. He was sickened. This wasn't just an internal mistake. This was a betrayal of everything he believed the bank stood for. He looked at Karen, and the words he delivered were simple, but final. This would not be tolerated. Karen opened her mouth, but nothing came out. There was no defense, no pride, no armor. Only the collapse of a woman who had never imagined she'd be the one standing in disgrace. But now she was, and there was no going back. She had destroyed everything she once held sacred. And now, Michael Bennett's voice, stripped of all warmth, delivered the final blow. He turned to Chairman Richard Morrison, the room watching with breathless anticipation. "I demand immediate action," he said, each word carrying the weight of thunder. "Against Karen Mitchell. Against everyone involved. I will not accept silence, cover-ups, or tolerance for discrimination in a bank I own." No argument. No delay. Morrison nodded. He knew what this moment required. "Mr. Bennett," he replied, voice tight with resolve, "I assure you, this will be handled decisively. Effective immediately, Karen Mitchell and Lisa Edwards are suspended. A full investigation begins now. Swift, transparent, uncompromising." The words didn't just land, they detonated. Karen gasped like she'd been slapped. Her legs buckled. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks, not from guilt, but from the sheer weight of what she had lost. Because in that instant, her entire world ended. The dusk outside painted the sky in orange and gray, but inside the bank, the sun had set permanently on Karen Mitchell's reign. Every eye turned to her. The same employees who once bowed to her will now watch her unravel, powerless to help and unwilling to try. Then came the final sentence. Chairman Morrison turned, now speaking not as a colleague, but as a judge. "Karen Mitchell," he said, voice echoing like a courtroom gavel, "your employment is hereby terminated. Effective immediately. You are permanently barred from all First National Bank branches. What you did today violates every value this bank stands for, and I will never allow such behavior in any institution I lead." The silence after that was deafening. No defense. No appeal. No support. Karen's legs trembled. She looked around, eyes darting wildly, hoping, begging, for one familiar face. One sympathetic look. But there were none. Only cold stares, cold justice, and cold silence. In seconds, the woman who once towered over this building had become a symbol of disgrace. The phone started buzzing. Across the bank, hands gripped screens. Eyes widened. The story was already live. Clips from the surveillance room had been leaked, shared, blasted across every social platform like wildfire. And in less than an hour, Karen Mitchell's name was everywhere. Photos, footage, headlines. Bank manager fired after racially profiling CEO's son. Karen Mitchell, the face of prejudice in corporate America. Millions of views. Thousands of reposts. Hashtags trending. Celebrities, activists, journalists, everyone had seen the footage. And they weren't holding back. Karen was torn apart. Labeled a racist. An authoritarian. Worse. Civil rights leaders issued public statements. Politicians condemned her. People who had once respected her now called for criminal charges. And through it all, Karen crumbled. Her name, once a symbol of polished success, was now a cautionary tale. A meme. A warning. Outside, night had fallen, but Karen was trapped in something far darker. She stumbled out of the bank, numb, humiliated, swarmed by reporters and onlookers. Microphones thrust toward her. Cameras flashing like lightning. "Miss Mitchell, do you regret your actions? How could you treat a child like that? Do you think you deserve what's happening to you? She couldn't answer. Her voice gone. Her strength shattered. She covered her face and ran. But there was nowhere left to run. Even her driver, a man who had worked loyally for years, looked away. Didn't open the door. Didn't speak. Just stared through the windshield, stone-faced. She got in alone. And drove away, alone. But the nightmare had only begun. In the days that followed, her life collapsed completely. The phone never stopped ringing. Angry callers, furious strangers, journalists desperate for interviews, and employers making sure she never worked again. Regulators launched inquiries. Civil rights commissions demanded formal investigations. Karen's name was blacklisted in every corner of the industry. And just like that, her 20-year career was erased. From power broker to pariah. From respected leader to public enemy. Once a woman who could make others tremble with a glance, now she sat trembling in her darkened home, curtains drawn, afraid to even step outside. She had once stood tall at the top. Now she was buried beneath the weight of her own actions. There, in that quiet ruin, she finally looked in the mirror and saw what she had become. Not a leader. Not a victim. But a lesson. Because what she lost wasn't taken from her. She threw it away, with arrogance, with ignorance, and with prejudice. And the world had watched her fall. Now, she would live with the consequences for the rest of her life. But while Karen Mitchell faded into disgrace, the story didn't end there. Because the impact of this incident was only beginning to spread. And the world wasn't just watching. The world was changing. Each time he spoke, he shared his story with sincerity, emotional depth, and unwavering courage. And every single time, he left the room silent. People listened, eyes wide, hearts heavy, as a 13-year-old boy told them what it felt like to be handcuffed for saving his birthday money, what it meant to be judged before he ever had a chance to speak, and how, even through pain, he chose to rise instead of break. Jaden Bennett, once just a name on a school roster, had become a symbol, a voice, a movement. Videos of his speeches went viral. Clips of his quiet strength, his honest words, and his refusal to give up caught fire on social media. He wasn't loud. He didn't rage. He simply told the truth. And that truth? It shook the world. The Equal Rights Initiative exploded into one of the fastest-growing youth-driven civil justice programs in the country. Schools signed up. Parents called in tears. Politicians started paying attention. Change had a face now. And it was a boy who refused to be broken. Meanwhile, Michael and Amanda Bennett pushed forward with tireless devotion. They weren't just Jaden's parents anymore. They were builders of a new legacy. They expanded the initiative's reach to include scholarships for underprivileged youth, legal aid partnerships for victims of discrimination, in-school simulation programs teaching empathy and awareness from a young age. And Michael? He didn't just speak at boardrooms anymore. He spoke at colleges, civil rights forums, even Congress. He wasn't just the CEO of the Bennett Group anymore. He was the father of the boy who sparked a national reckoning. A reckoning that refused to die down. Police departments across the country took notice. Departments in 4 major cities rewrote their arrest procedures, citing the Bennett case directly. More than a dozen corporations adopted First National's new model for anti-bias training and transparency. Karen Mitchell's fall had shaken a building. Jaden Bennett's voice had shaken a nation. And then, 1 year after the incident that changed everything, the initiative hosted its first national conference, bringing together youth leaders, educators, law enforcement, and civil rights activists under one roof. The keynote speaker? Not Michael. Not a celebrity. But Jaden. He walked onto the stage in a crisp navy blazer, his voice still soft but now lined with confidence. He looked out at the thousands who had gathered to listen. Then, slowly, he began. I was 13 when it happened. I walked into a bank with my birthday money and a dream to open my first account. I walked out in handcuffs. But I'm not here today because I'm angry. I'm here because I believe we can be better. Because even when people fail you, there's still a path forward. And I'm walking it, so no one else has to do it alone. The room erupted into a standing ovation. Not for a boy who had been a victim, but for a young man who had become a leader. This was no longer a scandal. It was a story of resilience, of accountability, and of how one act of injustice lit the fuse for something greater. Because while Karen Mitchell faded into silence, Jaden Bennett rose into history. And his story? It was just getting started. Jaden's story didn't just stop with pain, it exploded into unwavering conviction. His voice, steady, honest, and full of courage, told the world what it meant to be a kid judged unfairly just because of his skin color. And people listened. Millions of hearts were touched. The media? This time, they weren't chasing scandal. They celebrated hope. Jaden had turned his darkest moment into a powerful force for change, becoming a beacon in the fight against racial discrimination. Messages flooded in, from every corner of the globe. Letters, emails, texts, all filled with support, admiration, and gratitude for his bravery. Under Jaden's leadership, the Equal Rights Initiative blossomed. Financial literacy programs, life skills workshops, anti-discrimination training, confidence-building courses, all launched nationwide, reaching schools and underserved communities alike. Thousands of young people of color found strength and opportunity where there was once silence. Even First National Bank stepped up, pledging long-term support for the initiative. Chairman Morrison himself met Jaden, offering a heartfelt apology and deep respect for the boy's strength. Looking back, Michael knew this had been more than just a painful ordeal. It was a transformational moment. Jaden wasn't just a wounded 13-year-old anymore. He was a leader, a symbol of hope, determined to build a future where no child would be judged or denied justice because of the color of their skin. Jaden Bennett's journey is a powerful reminder. Prejudice and racism cause deep harm, yes. But courage, perseverance, hope, they have the power to change the world. What do you think about Jaden's courage and the incredible changes his family made? If this story moved you, smash that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that inspire and empower. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.